Happy coding.
Hello there, this is Kevin here, and welcome to our next video in our series of Intro to Web Development. So we've already learned quite a bit. We've learned about like the history of HTML and CSS and layout stuff. So we know how to create content using HTML. We know how to style that content in CSS, and we know how to lay that out using like Flexbox and stuff. And today we're going to sort of extend that and learn how to make that content interactive. So far, all of your pages have been pretty static, where you load the page, there's the content, and that's it. And that's fine for a lot of web pages, but for many web pages, what you want is for the user to be able to like click around and give input, and you take that input, do something with it, and provide some output. So there's a ton of examples of that. You've likely seen them in the real world. And that is sort of implemented using a third language called JavaScript. So we're adding to our toolbox. We've got HTML, CSS, and now we will have JavaScript. So this video will be an introduction to like how you add JavaScript to your web page, and like one of the fundamental building blocks of JavaScript, which is calling functions. So the best way I know how to talk about this stuff is just by doing it, honestly. So I'm going to jump over to my glitch editor. I just have this open in like a standard template that we've been using. This is just HTML. There's a little CSS file here, but I'm pretty sure it's empty. Yeah. So far we've learned about HTML. You know how to add tags. I could add another tag here if I wanted like a UL with some LIs, 1, 2, and 3. Hopefully that's pretty much review by now. And you know how to look up other HTML tags, bring them into your page, and all that good stuff. I can also style it. So I could either use like a style tag, or I have this like external style sheet set up. And to style it, I am using a different language, right? So this is HTML. This is a hypertext markup language. This is one language. If I jump over to my CSS file, now all of a sudden I am writing a different language, which has different rules. I'm no longer using tags and stuff in here. I am now using selectors and setting up rules. So let's say I wanted to make those LIs a little bigger, for example. I would use the LI selector, and then I would use the open curly brace, and then I would say, use the name of my property, which I don't even remember. Let's see, like font size, let's guess. And I want to say like, I don't know, 24 pixels. And there we go. My LIs are now a little bigger. So the important thing here is like I'm writing in two different languages. So it's a little bit like talking in two different languages, but here it's like computer languages or programming languages. So I've got HTML and CSS. So now I'm going to build on that and add a third language. So I'm going to get rid of this style because I don't really need it. And I'm going to go back to my index, and I'm going to delete this UL as well. Okay. So I'm pretty much just starting over. So to add JavaScript to my page, what I want to do is I'll start out in the head section. So I'm like right up here, sort of inside of the head tag. This is similar to how before we would have written a style tag and added CSS in here. Instead of a style tag, what I want to do is add a script tag. So I'm going to use that. That name script, and glitch here is nice enough to already add the closing tag. So I like to add some white space here. And now inside of this tag, I am no longer writing HTML. I'm inside of an HTML tag technically, but inside of that script tag, I am now writing JavaScript, which has a different set of rules, similar to like HTML had one set of rules and CSS had a different set of rules. JavaScript has, yet another set of rules. So to start to write JavaScript, I need to understand like one of the most fundamental building blocks of computer science, not just in web development and JavaScript, but in like most, maybe even every computer science like programming language. And that is the idea of calling a function. So I like to think of a computer as like, kind of a not very smart assistant. So let's say you wanted your assistant to, I don't know, follow a recipe. And the way you would do that is you would write down a series of steps. You might say like step one. I'm just going to write down like some, this is not JavaScript. I'm just writing this down as an example. Like you might say like one, like preheat oven to 350 degrees. You might say two, get 1 cup of sugar. And 3, get 2 cups of flour. You might write down a series of steps, and your assistant will follow those steps one at a time and accomplish whatever goal that you set out with. Now, importantly, again, your assistant is not very smart. The computer is not very smart. So the computer will do exactly what you tell it to in exactly the order that you tell it to do it. And it will also not really know what to do if you add like stuff that doesn't really make sense. So let's say I say like preheat oven to, I don't know, green degrees. Like that isn't a thing, right? So your assistant at this point will give up and like fall on the floor and start crying. Like, I don't know, the metaphor is getting away from me, but this is where the computer will start to get really, really picky about like exactly what words you use, exactly what symbols you use. And if it's like even a little bit wrong, it'll break. So that is the idea of sort of giving your assistant a series of steps, and your assistant, in this case the computer, following those steps one at a time. So that's each of these steps I like to think of as calling a function. Okay, so that's conceptually what a function is. It's just telling the computer to do a thing. And now in order to actually do that, to call the function, I'm going to delete my nonsense here, and I'm going to actually start writing in JavaScript. So to call a function, what you do is you type the name of the function, and then you have like parentheses, and then inside of those parentheses, you give it any like arguments or parameters that it will need. So we'll talk about like what functions are available in a second, but it's going to be a little annoying. Let me see how I want to do this. This is fine for now. So I'm going to type the name of a function. In this case, I want to call the alert function. It's called alert. So I'm going to type alert, and then I'm going to type an open parenthesis and a closing parenthesis, and then a semicolon. So open parenthesis, close, and then semicolon. And this is what I meant when I said it was going to get annoying, because glitch automatically runs your code like right away. So as soon as I hit that semicolon, it ran my code. And so now I have this like pop up here. So just in order to, I don't know, sort of talk about this, what I'm going to do, oh man, it's going to be super annoying, is I'm going to disable this preview. And I'm going to open it up in a new window so that I have like control over like when it runs. But the idea is the same. I just have, a page over here that is, this is the result of my code over here. So I've got my alert function inside of my script tag. So what is happening when I load that page is the computer reads the code sort of line by line. It says, okay, I'm in an HTML file. That's cool. I've got an HTML tag. Oh, I've got a head section. This is going to give me like information about the page. So the title is this. So I'm going to put that in the tab. Oh, here's a CSS file. So it goes and loads that. And again, sort of reads through it line by line. Then it gets here and says, okay, I've encountered a script tag, which means I'm going to like start looking for JavaScript. And again, keeps reading line by line. It gets to this line and it says, it sees alert, which tells it to show a pop-up box. That's just the name of the function that shows a pop-up box, alert. So it shows that page, or it shows that pop-up, and then keeps going. Then it gets down to the body and then finally loads like an H1 and a P and then closes the rest of the tags. So if I refresh over here, here's my pop-up. And it's just like, the name of my glitch project, which I haven't given a special name, and an OK button. So that's not, super exciting. It's, a pop-up. It's fine. And this gets into the idea of parameters or arguments. So remember before that I had like a recipe where I said like preheat the oven to 350 degrees, get 1 cup of sugar, get 2 cups of flour, whatever it was. Notice in those instructions, they have numbers in them. And those numbers are like providing more information, because if you just said preheat the oven, your assistant, or in this case, the computer, wouldn't know what to preheat it to. If you said, go get sugar, how much sugar should it get? And there might be some defaults or something, but without that extra information, your computer's not going to know what to do. So in this case, I said, show a pop-up box, but I didn't tell it like what to show inside that pop-up box. So what I need to do is give it a parameter, and I could give it a number. I could say, show the number 42, for example. So then if I go over here, I'm just going to refresh and just see what that pop-up shows. Refresh, and oh man, that's super teeny tiny, and I can't zoom into that. I promise that it says 42 here. Let me think, is there a better way to do this? Not really. There will be in a second, but this says 42 now. And so that's me like calling a function and providing a parameter or an argument, which is like giving more information to that function. So I am saying, show an alert box, like show a pop-up box, and inside of that, show the number 42. I'm going to switch to a different function now. So there are many, 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 many functions in JavaScript. In fact, we'll talk about creating your own functions. So in a way, there are infinite number of functions in JavaScript. So how do you know what else is out there? Like, we know how to show a pop-up box that shows the number 42, but chances are you don't want to just show pop-up boxes. There are a few places to look, and hopefully by now you can kind of guess at what they are going to be. One is here, this page that I'm sort of working from here. I've called out a few helpful functions that, even just based on what you currently know, come in handy. So that's like document.write, alert, and console.log. These are pretty helpful functions that you'll probably use again and again. You can also just sort of type in, I don't know, like JavaScript function, and let's say I wanted to, I don't know, get the maximum of two numbers, something like that, something mathy. And sure enough, there is a function that gives you the maximum between two numbers. That's kind of an arbitrary example, but just know that there are a bunch of functions out there. But the one I want to focus on next, because I think it'll make our lives easier right now, is this document.write function. So I'm going to go back to my glitch editor, and I'm going to maybe just get rid of my alert. And I'm going to say document.write, and sure, I'll give it that 42 again, because I'm just giving it a number. And so I'm telling it to call the document.write function, and I'm passing it in a value of 42. So let's see what that does. So if I refresh, I no longer see my alert, but if I zoom in here, you can kind of see that 42 is written to the document. And it's shown sort of above it because like that's where it is in this page. There's other ways to like load it later, but usually if you're using this, you're kind of just debugging and messing around anyway. So this is the document.write function. And the next thing I want to talk about is, so I've given it like a number so far, but chances are you don't just want to use numbers in your page. Like, you want to use words and text and even like images and stuff, maybe HTML itself. So the way you do that is with a different, it's called a type. So this is a number. The type of this value is a number. And you now want to use a different type, which is a string. And so a string is just a string of characters, or you can think of it as like a string of letters. And the way you use a string is with a quotation mark. So usually by default, it's a single quote in JavaScript, but that's like mostly by convention. You can actually use double quotes if you want to. That especially comes in handy if you have letters that contain like a single quote. But for now, I'll just say a single quote. And I'll say like, hello world. And now I'm going to go back to my page here. I want to refresh. And okay, that was a silly example because I already have hello world in here. So maybe I'll change that to like hello JavaScript. And maybe I'll change this to like hello HTML. Just to differentiate them. But in here, my JavaScript is calling the document.write function and passing in a parameter or an argument of this string value, which is hello JavaScript. And let's go refresh that. And sure enough, there is my hello JavaScript. Here's my HTML. and the other p tag in there. So that is calling another function in JavaScript. So that is, we're getting into the pattern, I think. And then maybe the last function I'll show you is the console.log function, because this is one you will use constantly because it's really useful for debugging, and it's a little mysterious at first if you've never seen it before. So similar to document.write, which takes like an argument or a parameter that prints something like to the page, I'm going to call the console.log function, and I'm going to, so I wrote the name of the function, which is console.log, and then I'm going to have a parenthesis, and then inside of these parentheses, I'm going to give it a value. So I'm going to say like, hello world again. I'll type actually again so we can see it. And I'm going to end it with a semicolon. Technically, semicolons are optional, but I usually add them. Okay. So now in my page, I have this script tag, and it contains a single line of code that says console.log, hello world again. And if I go to my page and I refresh, like, wait a second, where did that go? And the answer is that it went to your JavaScript console, which is not shown by default. It's a tool that comes with your browser that if you've never touched web development before, you've probably never looked at it, but this is where a ton of information goes, like for web developers. So I'm in Firefox here. Every browser has their own like set of browser tools, but if you go here and then into more tools, my dumb face is hiding. Let me hide my silly face. Yeah, okay. So if I go up here to this menu, and then I go to more tools, and then I open web developer tools, and that opened up a tab here on the left. And right here, you see my hello world again, because I'm opened up to the console, the JavaScript console. The other way to do that is by right clicking and hitting inspect. And that takes me to my developer tools, but it has the inspector tab open. If I switch over to console, here is my hello world again. So this is where your JavaScript, like log statements and errors, this is where they go. So this is, as you're writing JavaScript, if you encounter an error, this is the first place you should look in your JavaScript console always, because this is where your error message is going to be. All right, so you don't really need to see my face, but hi, here I am. The last thing I'll talk about is the idea of like external JavaScript. And so remember back in CSS, you could either use a style tag like this. I could have style and then have my CSS in here, or I could have this line of code, which then loads a CSS file, and I can put all of my CSS over there, sort of in that file separately. The same thing is true for JavaScript. So I can use this script tag like this, and I can have the JavaScript directly in my HTML. And that's, okay for small projects, but generally what you'll find is that keeping your JavaScript in its own file is helpful, just because then you have your HTML one place, your CSS in another place, and your JavaScript in another place. And it also helps you like load the same JavaScript on multiple pages. And the way you do that is I'm going to delete my code here. And I'm going to add an attribute to my script tag. Where'd that go? And I'm going to say source equals, and then I'm going to give it the name of a file in my project here. And I'm going to name it like script.js. You can name it pretty much whatever you want, but usually you want this .js extension. So now I have a script tag with a source attribute that points to script.js. So all of that's, pretty much basic HTML stuff. That's an HTML tag with an attribute. But the important part is that now I need to add that file over here. I need to have a script.js file. So I'm going to say script.js up here. Again, you can name this whatever you want. You could say like my code.js. As long as it matches, it's fine. But I'm going to call it script.js because that's kind of standard. And now I have script.js. And in here, I am writing JavaScript. I no longer need my script tag like this because that's HTML. I just write my JavaScript here. So I'm going to say like, I don't know, console.log hello world. And maybe I'll also do like document write. I am in the script.js file. And we're going to have semicolons just because I'm a little bit annoying about that. But the thing I want to point out is I have 2 lines of code here, and that's totally fine. You can have many lines of code, and what the computer is going to do is just follow them one at a time. It's going to say first console.log, and then second document.write. So if I start over in the index.html file, it's going to read the code line by line. It's going to say, okay, I'm in an HTML file. All right, I've got some HTML. Okay, I'm in the head section. Set the title of my browser tab. Load the CSS. Load the JavaScript. And when it gets here, it's going to jump over to the JavaScript file, and it's going to first say console.log and then document.write. And then it'll continue like loading the HTML. So now finally, if I go over here and I refresh, let me open up my browser tools so we can see that. Sure, and I'll refresh. So now I see hello world over here, and I see I am in the script.js file here. Okay, so that is everything I wanted to talk about in terms of writing JavaScript. So this was like the fundamentals of adding JavaScript to your web page. You can either use the script tag, you can use the script tag and then put code inside of it, or you can add the source attribute here. Either one, is kind of fine. And then inside of that, you are writing JavaScript. And in JavaScript, you are calling functions. You call functions by writing the name of the function, then a parenthesis, and inside of those parentheses, you give it any arguments or parameters that it needs. And that is a way to provide more information to that function so it knows what to do. Okay, so in the next few videos, we'll build on that to get more interesting, and we will create our own functions, and then we'll actually make an interactive page. But for now, that's the fundamentals of JavaScript in a nutshell. Hopefully that was helpful. I'll see you in the next few, and until then, happy coding.